Slick and Shiny, tongue-in-cheek productions. One more time. Gives you a look at the old days of another place throughout Westmoreland County. And this time we're going to look at something pretty far toward the east of the county, almost as far out as the boundary, the eastern boundary, which happens to be up here on Laurel Ridge. And here is Ligonier. And between Ligonier and the top of Laurel Ridge, we come upon Laughlintown. We are going to see a little bit about Laughlintown today. This will be one of several of our attempts to find out something about how these places came about and what happened in the meantime. I like to show these maps to give context, to give a picture of where things were. This is an older map going out to the 1860s. The real difference here is that the north orientation is not exactly the same. In this map, the north is kind of like off this way. Mostly maps you'll find have north toward the direct top. Right here is what we're looking at, Laughlintown. And you'll notice in the old days, they spelled it with an S, Laughlin's Town. Ligonier over here, and up here being the top of Laurel Mountain or Ridge, whatever you want to call it, the boundary of Westmoreland County. This is the eastern boundary. And over on this side is Somerset County. I pointed these out because I just wanted to say something about how the reason for Laughlintown. There are several reasons, but one of the reasons was this was an area of production of iron. In Westmoreland County early on, there were maybe something like 15 iron furnaces where iron ore was converted into iron. And all but 2 of them were out in this area out this way. This was Washington Furnace. This was California Furnace. There was another older furnace down this way called Westmoreland Furnace. Up here, General Arthur St. Clair had his Hermitage Furnace. And as you go further around, you'll find more of them. I just wanted to point out that the iron industry was one of the reasons that Laughlintown developed. Also, the fact that there was a road going through here. This was the old turnpike. And the old turnpikes needed places where people could stop and rest overnight. And so it became a place where there were, you might call them bed and breakfast today. Another thing was the old wagons took an awful beating, punishment coming over the mountains. And it was a good place for a blacksmith. The guy who founded Laughlintown and had it laid out, Robert Laughlin, was himself a blacksmith. This is Compass Inn. It's one of the places that most people remember from going through Laughlintown. Something I learned recently was the Ligonier Historical Society purchased that in the 1960s. When I do these things, they're always learning experiences for me. I had assumed that Ligonier would be considered older than Laughlintown. But in doing research for this project, I picked up John Boucher's Old History, published in 1906. Boucher tells us, I quote, "The oldest and quaintest town in Ligonier Valley is Laughlintown. It was laid out by Robert Laughlin, 1797. It is the oldest town now in existence in the county except Greensburg. Now, this doesn't in any way contradict the fact that Ligonier has existence as an historical site. During the French and Indian War in the 1750s, it was a site of a British fort. And after that, even during the Revolution, we can remember that it was a place that some of the early settlers came and gathered around because they were afraid the Indians were being upset and instigated by the British. And the old fort was refurbished to be, again, an area of protection. One of the people who worked on that refurbishment was the blacksmith, Robert Laughlin. Before Boucher wrote his book, more than 20 years before, another book had been published by George Dallas Albert, who wrote probably the first significant history of the county. And I just want to read something that he said. Around 1880, Albert wrote, he was talking about the old citizens of the town who were still alive when he was writing. One of them was Conrad George, and I'm quoting, Mr. George was born January the 1st, 1804, and recollects the site of the town before it was laid out or had any buildings on it. He recalled the town in the early 1800s as having no buildings there yet. So things changed over the years. And what I'm going to do is shut this down, and someone who's from out that way, Angie O'Brien, has done a drive-through for us, and she's going to point out some of the local areas of interest, places of interest.
Traveling Route 30 east from Ligonier, you will come into Laughlintown. Here on your right is the post office, and just up from that is the Compass Inn Museum. Here it is seen from the rear, and here is an old photo I found of it in 1913 with the DuPont Powder Wagon and Cavalry Escort. Across from that is the Ligonier Country Inn and the original pie shop. Traveling further east along Route 30, you will come to Truffle's Antique Store. It is the old schoolhouse, since converted. Not too far from the old schoolhouse, traveling along Route 30 east, you will come to the Yellow House. It was a tavern in use from 1830 to 1885. Quite a grand place with a drover's porch. Turning around now, we'll head back towards the center of town, and we're going to make a left onto California Avenue between the Compass Inn and the Ligonier Country Inn. We will travel to the Rolling Rock Club, and at the stop sign, the road will become dirt. At the bottom of this hill, you will come to Noggles Covered Bridge, a replica of the original built in the 1860s. Let's cross it. Just up the road from Noggles Covered Bridge, you will come to the California Furnace, which started operations in 1853. It is a rather large structure that was rebuilt in the 60s by Richard K. Mellon. The lawn surrounding the furnace is now in use as a picnic area, and there are several places you can camp along the road that leads to the furnace. You may also notice that the creek banks are filled with black slag glass